It's time for Doomed Discussions, brought to you by Doomed and Stoned. Welcome to another Doomed Discussions. I'm Billy Goate, the editor-in-chief of doomedandstoned.com. With me are my very special guests, Eryka Fir and Matt Bacon. Eryka is a wonderful stoner doom artist and bassist and just jack of all trades. Matt, you know from previous recordings that he is the guru of all things PR and marketing related. But yeah, I mean, let's turn it over to you guys and have you introduce yourselves briefly, and then we'll get into our discussion. So Eryka, you first. Tell us more about yourself.
Hi, so I live on the East Coast. I live in Rhode Island, and I've been playing in a band called Coma Hole for the past couple years, or like you had mentioned, stoner doom duo type. And then I do a lot of like freelance artistic work and try to work with bands and like create merch and stuff like that. At least that's what I'm trying to do, and I've done some of that the past like couple of years. And then I don't know, just lots of different little artsy endeavors I do. So
nice.
Yeah.
And then Matt, what's your deal, dude?
I don't know. I just I just like, you know, I do a lot of the marketing for Ripple Music. I do marketing with a bunch of other labels. I also do Magnetic Eye, you know, so do a bunch of stuff there, just running ads, organizing social media campaigns, general, what have you. And I've been doing that for like a really long time. And when you invited me on today to talk about, you know, people in the scene being jerks, I thought that was relevant and appropriate.
Right on. Yeah. So let's get into our topic for the day, and that is assholes in the scene. So kind of harshly worded, of course, but seriously, we've all had our encounter with drunken people at bars and things like that. And that's not really what I have in mind, but on the business end of things, we have all encountered in our own way people who just don't read social cues very well, who are pushy, who are negative, who really approach it all the wrong way. And I thought maybe we could talk about some of our experiences and maybe some of the causes and solutions. And there may honestly be people out there who don't know any other way to conduct themselves. So yeah, I mean, have you experienced people like that in recent months?
I would say, it's different, like real life versus online, because I feel like the dynamic there is totally different. Because I've like played shows and done stuff where like people don't pick up on social cues and make comments, and then now all of that's kind of gone, so it's all like on the internet, which is also hard sometimes to tell like what people mean when they say certain things. I want to say for the most part recently I haven't been experiencing too much, but I've definitely seen people do it like in comment threads and on pages, and I've like unfollowed certain places that I used to follow and get information from, just because it seems like there's such an overload of people just like, I don't know, being super rude and like not conducive to like conversations like pertaining with music, or being like super jaded and just like an all-out bummer. So
right.
yeah
I've noticed one of my friends who is also with Ripple Music, by the way, he just went off social media a couple months ago, and I don't think he has plans of really coming back. And then I have another friend in that circle who says he just lives in the notifications. So he doesn't look at timelines anymore. There are things he just doesn't want to know about the people he's friends with. So he just lives in the notifications. If somebody tags him, or if, you know, a band or something he's following gives an update, that's where he's at. And I've started to do that a lot more just out of necessity, but I've noticed when I get into groups, when I get into, you know, things like that, obviously there's negativity that's been part and parcel with the internet for years. So that's definitely out there, and some of it is pretty surprising. Yeah. Matt, how about you?
I think a lot of this negativity has definitely increased in the last year for obvious reasons. You know, and I think that as people get more stressed out with the pandemic, even as I think it's more the base level of stress rather than like the actual day-to-day stress. Like obviously most people figured out like, okay, how am I going to pay my bills under coronavirus? You know, I think that's obviously an issue for a lot of people still, but it's not as much of an issue as it was, you know. But I think there is sort of this like general day-to-day like my entire fucking life is half-hour Zoom calls, you know, and I do fucking 10 a day, and I hate it. And I think that that's my life. That's a lot of people's lives. And I think that leads to a level of anger and aggravation that is starting to permeate a lot more. And I think it especially permeates more when you don't have to see that person at a show, you know, because I do think there is sort of this idea, especially within sort of rock and metal, where so much of it's based around the live experience, where, oh, hey, if I'm a jerk to that person online, like, I'm going to see them at a show, and that's going to be weird.
Yeah.
You know? And I've definitely interacted with people who don't like me personally at shows, and been like, you know what I mean?
Awkward.
Like, it's not fun for anyone.
Yeah.
So I think there's that component. But I do think, you know, I also would say that due to the demographic layout of the Stoner Doom community in particular, there's going to be more issues just sort of by default.
Let's talk about the business end of things, because that's what really intrigues me, because there's no way you can really, like, root out personalities that are more aggressive, right? That's just in the nature of every business, every scene, every whatever known to man. You know, you just have some people who have learned to kind of get their way by being a bit more pushy and bossy and things like that. So, you know, setting aside the personality things, maybe, I guess, for right now, my observation seems to be, and you may have explained it, with people being more desperate, wondering how they're going to pay their bills. The sense of decorum when it comes to doing business has been kind of lost on sometimes customers, sometimes people who want to do business with you as a peer. I don't know if you've experienced anything like that, but I've certainly come across, you know, my fair share of people who are very demanding, they don't seem to know, here's how you get people to cooperate with you. I don't know, has that been an experience for either of you?
Yeah.
So do you mean like just in like a personal, like a business sense of it with other people? Because I've definitely experienced things where people just like don't know how to, I don't know, approach working with you and come off in such a very like, I don't know how to explain it, like maybe like uninformed or dismissive way when wanting to, like, I don't know, have some sort of exchange.
Sure. Do you feel like you experience it to an inordinate amount due to your gender, or is that?
I don't know. That's one thing that, like, I wonder sometimes. I definitely have moments where, like, I wonder if I'm being treated a particular way because of my gender, or if it's just like, I don't know, maybe I think of that automatically just because there's so many instances of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think that overall, like, maybe I'm oblivious to it because I try not to, like, really speculate every interaction is like somebody treating me differently because I'm a woman. But, like, I don't know. I don't feel like I personally notice it too much because of that. I don't know. I go back and forth.
Yeah. Well,
sometimes it's really obvious and sometimes it's more subtle. So
you're right. It's hard to know. Like, I have a member of my team who's working on a compilation for me, and it's a smaller scene with a lot of great talent, but one of the people that she won't approach is a guy who's a member of a band that basically just let her have it. Said, your art is terrible, your band is terrible, you're never going to amount to anything. And it made me so mad. I was like, all right, I'm doing a show on assholes in the scene. Obviously, I don't want to give away details for her protection and not to cause more strife in that particular scene, but you know, there are definitely some people who just, giving them the benefit of the doubt, they've learned to get their way, a certain manner. Not giving them so much benefit of the doubt, they're assholes that need to be avoided and shunned.
I've definitely heard of a lot of different people who are like that within the community. I can't speak from too much personal experience just because I feel like I haven't been immersed in it long enough yet. Like, I know a lot of people. I've made a lot of connections through, like, the internet and through, like, small groups, and, like, I know of a lot of these people, and I have a lot of friends in bands, and I see a lot of their experiences a lot, and I've heard lots of names of people who are not pleasant and heard of things that they have done. And I mean, I guess it's good for me to know just because then I can steer clear too. But I've never dealt with any of those people really yet. But it's really unfortunate that it seems like so many other people have.
Yeah, yeah. Matt, do you think the metal scene at large has a reputation for, just having a lot of rough customers in it?
I think that within music, there's a lot of different problems, right? Like there's a lot of different areas of concern, because you have sort of like, I've dealt with, metal dudes who are angry for no apparent reason and just kind of jerks. But I've seen that in other communities. I've seen, like I think drugs are a huge issue in music in general that like nobody really like addresses for some reason.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, that's what a big part of it that I think nobody really wants to talk about. So yeah, so that's sort of like two core points, is that music is already like more susceptible to this in general, Metal is disproportionate. I do work outside of metal, but most of it is still within sort of outsider music, right? So a lot of the mindsets are still fairly similar.
So you'd see something like this in country music maybe too, or...
Well, I mean, I don't work in country music. I'm saying I work in like dark wave.
Yeah, okay.
Where it's like, in many respects, someone gets into dark wave or something for the same reason they get into metal. Is like wanting alternative music that's like a little bit more interesting than whatever the fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I guess my larger point is like, so you've got to handle this that way. So I don't really know if metal is worse. The problem I think in metal is that you have this sort of old school hero worship, and so much of the game is like directed by like conservative white dudes who like don't really think about that as an issue. And not so much in like, oh, you can't be a conservative, but like maybe let's reevaluate where this leaves us, because I think when you have like, the only reason anyone thinks metal is going to come back is because it's all white dudes. Like I know people who are like into funk who are like, yeah, no, like there's some of us and that's cool, but like funk is gonna eventually go away. We're okay with that. Like we accept reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Whereas like metal, like, and rock, like think they're gonna come back and like
still pining for the days of 1988 or whatever.
Exactly. Think they're gonna like. Have you been paying attention to literally all popular music for the last 35 years? Like, and the answer is no, they haven't. Which is what it is. But like that's sort of the issue as I see it.
So kind of like adjusting expectations, whereas the quintessential dream, the fabled story of the rising rock star, the things that movies are made of, that probably is not going to be in your band's cards. And knowing that is probably going to be the case. Now, how do you approach the world? I think it does make a big difference just what your expectations are and whether you live to see that kind of glory and expect that and want to push your way and just get there as fast as you can and get to yes with everybody, no matter how that happens. Ambition is one thing, but ambition with the wrong expectations, I think, maybe has you perhaps leaning more in the direction of being super rude and aggressive to get there.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I take away from what you were saying there.
No, I mean, I think that's basically it.
Yeah. And it actually occurred to me that maybe there are some people who really don't know how to go about having good relationships, like good, when I say business relationships, I mean people you're going to come back to again and again for help, for insight, for services, or you're going to give services to. It occurred to me that there are probably some people who are fairly new to this, or maybe they just are coming to that awakening either because of a drug or alcohol problem or whatever, that their personality and the way they push through to people has been getting in the way of really having great relationships. So maybe we could, also talk about what are some best practices that you think everyone should know if they want to get somewhere in this biz? And that's a question for either of you.
feel like you should really be looking to engage with the people that like are doing things similarly to what you're doing. It's such like a very simple thing, but I feel like a lot of people like just don't realize it. Like for instance, you know how often I have somebody follow me and then I'll follow back because I check out like who follows me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I try to support people too, especially if they're people doing things similarly to what I'm trying to do. And then immediately you got people like pushing their stuff on you. They're in your inbox and not even saying hi. Just like, oh, hey, like you do this, I do this. You should listen to this. You'd like it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
now I'm definitely not gonna look at it. Like, hey, like there's ways to do it and there's ways to not. And I know that that's one that like beaten into the ground, the classic dude or chick, whatever, hitting up your inbox, like sending their links to you and they don't even know you. And it's like, it's so, stuff like that is so off-putting. And it's like, you should be genuinely interested in the other people that are doing things that you're doing in your community. And you should like strengthen those relationships. And like, there's so much to gain from that, whether it's just friendship or like opportunities, just building that web. I don't know. I've met so many people through actually like engaging and showing interest when I've been genuinely interested, obviously. It's just a better way to be and it works out better for everybody. Like instead of being like, I don't know, thieving and conniving and pushy, like,
yeah,
you know, honestly, that's like one of the biggest things that happens to me all the time. I've made jokes where I'm like, honestly, it's not my inbox being full of dudes like being like gross to me or like making comments. Like I get that every now and again, but it's a lot of the times it's dudes who are like, oh my God, like you play bass, I play bass. Check this out. You should listen to this. Hey, do this on my thing. And I'm like,
yeah,
scene. Like I'm not gonna.
right.
You're not interested. So I think what I'm trying to say is just, I don't know, just be real and like be interested in develop your relationships and connections with everybody who's doing what you're doing, because like I feel like the community is like one of the best parts of it.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think social media really has, especially when things started getting more monetized too, it really conditioned a lot of us for that quick sales pitch and return gratification. The other day I was browsing YouTube and on my recommendations there was Billy Corgan on a roller coaster and it was 15 seconds, 2.2 million views. I mistakenly clicked it and it was just Billy Corgan's song, The Smashing Pumpkins, playing while a roller coaster went down for 15 seconds. And it's kind of depressing when you think 2.2 million views and I can't get, 12 people to check out my article.
Yeah. That's another really adjacent thing that like I won't get into to steer off, but like with everything being online now, especially being an artist and trying to like promote yourself, and it seems like everybody else is doing that too because it's like the only way we can do it. It is like majorly depressing at times when you see things like that and you feel like you're putting your all into what you're doing, and it's like I have a lot of times where like I catch myself, but it's still difficult. I'll be like, what am I doing wrong that like I can't generate that, like, and I feel like I'm actually like, I don't know, trying to engage and put something interesting out there.
Right.
But
yeah. Matt, you've been quiet for a little while. I hope it's because you're contemplating
I am contemplating
deep things.
Always contemplating deep things. Yeah, I think there's a couple layers here. I always say, people view social media as me, but it's really you, And I think it's about like focusing on what can you give to people, be that really great art or bacons.bits or articles or whatever, right? And I think that like that's what makes people pay attention, not some sort of misguided attempt. And and I understand the networking thing is hard. And it's easy to be scared, and I've definitely had people like say to me in person like, oh, I was scared to talk to you online for whatever reason, which I get because I've definitely said mean things on the internet.
I can't believe it, but go ahead.
And I also think that I certainly am guilty of this, have a tendency to lionize other people, and so you're kind of afraid to reach out to them because of that. When sometimes you reach out to someone and it's like, oh, hey, you're really cool. Like, that's like my entire relationship with Scotty Tank Crimes, who like I wanted to be when I was 16. And like we have a podcast together and put out records together. And, but it was like, that was a really scary thing. But sometimes you do that. but it's hard, you know, and I think that there's obviously always this like layer of insecurity of like, am I really good enough to be a part of that?
I was scared to do this.
of
I
course,
literally
yeah.
was like, but I've been trying to push myself and not be afraid, because it you know, I want to actually, you know, talk to you more and you know, meet Billy and do things like this with people. But there's definitely always a layer of insecurity with things like that, unfamiliar territory, speaking to people.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Like my biggest thing is to just be the force I want to see in the scene. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I see what Scotty Tank Crimes does. I see what Carl Breakdown does. I see what all these 90s hardcore guys who I'm friends with do. And I'm like, okay, cool. How do I do that in my own way that's like ethical and helpful and cool? And, you know, and it's hard. You know, I think it's really hard, you know, but I think that, you know, obviously I fuck up a lot. And people are very fond of reminding me that. But I think it's important to be like, you know, like when I invited you, Eryka, I was like, well, Eryka, like you have to do that. You have to go, like, I have this opportunity due to my relationship with Billy. Cool. So how can I elevate someone else? And I think that always needs to be the conversation, is like, how do I, you know, because even if you have 30 followers, that's 30 followers someone else doesn't have. So why not try to help them?
Yeah, and I appreciate you reaching out and asking me, because it's always like exciting. And anytime you've ever done that, when you've like put me in a group with another person, and even if nothing like comes of it, it's still like, I'm like, oh, like you got to do that, and then it makes that person go like, I want to do that for somebody else. Like, and I try to do stuff like that with people if, you know, I feel like I can help somebody else out with something they're trying to do in any way. It's just a positive thing to do. Like,
yeah. And I just think when you do that every day, like, I don't think people understand the extent to which that's been my entire life since I was 14 years old. You know, and so they like turn around, they're like, oh, how do you have all these like, you know, other things? And it's like, well, I get to have Arthur Brown slumber party invitations because there's all this other shit that happened first.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's accessible for anyone. It's just like being as helpful and kind and good as possible.
I really like the direction you're going in with that, because I think, there's a tendency to want to deal with bad people just head on and just go to war. But on the flip side of that, really, it serves you better if you're focused more on building broader community with people who are like-minded and really spreading that community spirit. So that's one thing I really admire about you, is the emphasis on community building. I thought maybe we could focus the last quarter here on just, you know, advice for people who maybe are discouraged right now because they've had a recent interaction with somebody who's been rude, brusque, or maybe just like cut them down to the core and said, you know, your art is terrible, your band is terrible, you're not going to amount to anything. Stuff maybe they even heard growing up from their parents in different contexts, and now they're hearing it from some dude or some whoever out there. What advice would you kind of give them to encourage their spirit at this time?
I honestly say, just, you know, when I think about where I started with making art and posting videos, and I used to like have a YouTube channel when I was like 12 and 13 and uploading covers and stuff, and that's when people were like, I don't know, like maybe starting to be incredibly mean to people on the internet. I remember, and with what you said about like your parents and stuff, like I dealt with most of my life, like I felt really insecure about my passions. Like I would still do it, but like I had so many people being mean to me, it felt like all the time. And, you know, I used to internalize that, and like, it's just, there's always going to be people being mean, I feel, as much as like, I want to think that we could stop that in any way. I just feel like there's always going to be people who are trying to put other people down, and it's just based off of their own insecurity and the lack of faith in themselves, and whether it's, you know, because of something that happened to them or just because they don't have the motivation to do it. I would say you just gotta like keep doing it, and like not let what other people say to you negatively affect you too much. Because sometimes somebody can say something negative and it's a legitimate like criticism. And it's like, I've always thought like, if I am bad at something, I honestly would like somebody to tell me. But a lot of people are just like ruthlessly mean and are not being productive to your growth. So I've kind of tried to like just look into myself in those moments, and like I try to think about too like all the times people have said like really nice things to me, and like overall I feel like that can outweigh the negative, even though the negative is always the one that just sticks in your head more.
Right.
I'm constantly trying to like I'll have a lot of nice things happen, and then like somebody says something so mean, and like that's all of a sudden all that other stuff is gone, and all you can think about is the mean one, and then it just festers, and you're questioning everything you're doing, and you're like, am I actually good enough to be doing this? Am I good enough to have these opportunities? And like I constantly deal with that. Don't let it like stop you. You just have to look into yourself and see where you're at and just keep doing it. It's so hard. I deal with that all the time, especially with the social media aspect, where you feel like you see everybody else flourishing so much more than you, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? Even though you're aware that it's kind of an illusion, because you don't really know how all those people are doing, and everybody's just posting like the best parts of their life, which is fair. As I've gotten older, I've just learned that, there's a lot of people that will support you, and you have to figure out, I guess, where those people are if you don't know where they are yet. And like, just keep doing you and be honest, and don't let all the negative people, disrupt your flow and what you want to do. Because it's about like what you want to do, what you can offer to people, and just don't let like negative people take that away from you.
Yeah,
like,
that's so important. I was really discouraged over something last week, and when I allow depression to kind of take its course, it starts to globalize the problem, and it's like, this isn't relevant. Nobody really cares about what I'm doing, and then it just hit me. What would you be doing if you were back in 2013 when Doomed and Stoned started with just a handful of people? Would you still be doing what you're doing now? And I was like saying to myself, yeah, hell yeah, I'd be doing it. Why? Because I like doing those. I like documenting the scene. I like writing about the music that matters to me. It's an important outlet to me. So even when you're comparing yourself with other people and wishing you were here, there, if you're getting discouraged by that, you just come back to your roots, like you said.
Exactly. I try to remind myself, ask yourself those questions. And I say this thing to myself a lot where like, if I feel like I'm scrolling through my phone too much or whatever, and I'm getting discouraged at what everybody else is doing and where they're at, I'll just be like, it's not your journey. Everybody has their own thing. And like, it's hard to remember. I still go through it constantly where I feel myself just being really negative to myself about what I'm doing. But I'm just like, everybody's got a different path for how it's going to work out for them. And if you're really putting in the work and you really care about what you're doing, and you're seizing as many opportunities as possible for yourself that you can, how is it not going to work out for you? I try to like tell myself that.
Yeah, I was just going to just add to that before I went back to Matt and say, my mother, we were raised in kind of a rural Texas area for a big portion of my growing up years, and one of the things that she was really big on telling us kids is bloom where you're planted. It's kind of a parable more than anything. When you look at, a dandelion or whatever, especially in the hot Texas sun, you see this dandelion just blooming in the most odd places under the most withered circumstances, but it's still there, whether it's in Oregon or Texas or Sweden or wherever, the case may be. But this idea of blooming where you're planted. Okay, here I am, these are my circumstances. No, they're not ideal, or maybe they're getting ideal, or whatever the case may be, but I'm going to work with the opportunity I have, the friendships I have, the moment I have right now, and do what I can do, and just being true to that principle of blooming where I'm planted. Somehow that gives me comfort in the face of discouragement, whether it be people or finances or circumstances or whatever.
Yeah.
Mr. Bacon, your thoughts?
I think I actually wrote an article about this the other day for Ripple Effect. I think really my conclusions from the article were like, there's this quote from this is horrible, but there's this quote from the Fire Festival organizer, Billy McFarland. I find him to be a fascinating individual, And one of the things I really enjoyed him saying was in one of the documentaries about Fire Festival, he said, for things to go this wrong, a lot of things had to go right first. And I really enjoyed like the sheer ballsiness of saying that. But also I get it, right? Like at a certain point, for things to go this wrong, a lot of things had to go right first. And that's sometimes where I see myself is like something will go dramatically wrong and I'll have to be like, wait a second, but actually, let's just look at all the things I did to get to this place. You know, where it's like, oh man, I'm feeling insecure about, I don't know, when we did like the Zach Sabbath campaign, right? That's obviously scary. And that was probably the biggest campaign I've ever done in terms of ad spend, at least up to that point. And it was, you know, and it was like, oh my God, this is fucking terrifying. What are we doing? But like, you learn and, you know, and you go. But like, you know, when I was doing the Zach Sabbath campaign, I was like, fuck, like, this is really scary. But also I wanted to be Zach Wild when I was 14. And now I'm putting out his fucking band and we're going to have the highest chart position he's had in like 10 years or something.
Right.
And I think that like you just need to kind of appreciate it from that perspective. Like, oh, okay, like shit's really scary a lot of the time, but we can get there because we need to appreciate the things that have gone right and the things that have worked. You know, because I think it's really easy to feel, especially in music, like you're some sort of ongoing scam even to yourself.
Don't they call that the imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, but
time.
Figuring that out is really hard. I have a bunch of daily tasks. Some of them are introducing people every day and others like showing compassion to people every day. And then I also reach out to one new person every day or someone who I haven't talked to in at least a year. And I think doing stuff like that, I don't know, like I think about like I'll send texts to people, like old time homies from tour or whatever, and I'll be like, hey, thinking of you, hope you're well. Because I know how much that elevates me for a day. Like if I wake up to a message like that from some dude who's like, hey, just thinking about like the time we smoked weed out of an apple with Phil and Selmo. And you know, and then like you gave us all those euros that you had for I don't remember. It was, and then we saw Linkin Park together. It was a weird day. You know, but like texting someone about that was like a really good thing, you know, and I think you just gotta like keep remembering like, oh, I got to have that day happen and that was a cool day. And oh, I got to, you know, and oh, this person thinks I'm cool, or oh, I got invited to do something like this. It's important to just remember your past successes and use those as a guiding light. Yeah. Even though shit's stressful and you can constantly feel like you're not necessarily making an impact. And I don't know, this is something I've been struggling with this week in particular. But like, you know, you're a person, you can learn. You know, you're not a fucking cat. Like, cats are pretty fucked after a certain point. But like,
I admire my cats because at a certain point they just don't give a fuck.
Well, yeah. Like, but like, if you're a person, you can learn and you can grow and you can be like, well, that didn't work out, but let me watch some YouTube videos and figure some shit out.
Yep.
You know, like that's really all it is like, let's just watch some YouTube videos and learn some shit.
Yeah, watching that self-talk. Sometimes we can be meaner to ourselves than even other people can. And then when people are mean, then it just reinforces what we feel we've always believed about ourselves. And we really have to be fair and honest with ourselves in the process and recognize we're not all that we want to be, but we are growing and we have made tremendous progress in our lives and we're continuing to grow. And that's part of the excitement of doing what we do. Is it is a growth industry. It's about curiosity and exploring and developing, and you know, we're playing with this musical vocabulary that great artists of the past have kind of opened us up to, but there's still so much left to be discovered and to be explored. So just being open to that adventure always, and not letting a person or a day or yourself discourage you from that focus and that goal.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Anything else for the good of the order, as they say? Well, I feel like that's more of a meeting phrase, isn't it? Like, anything else before we adjourn? But yeah, anything else kind of that you were thinking or is on your heart before we say our goodbyes?
Thank you for having me, Billy. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah. It's always fun to talk to you, Matt, and I appreciate your time from your many Zoom calls each day. I can see how that would be tiring. And then,
Thank you for inviting me, Matt, and thank you for having me on this show. I'm glad I've heard your name a lot around, and I've seen your pages and stuff. And so yeah, it was cool to be asked to be a part of this and like actually talk to you guys about stuff like this. So
well, right on. Yeah, I'd love to have you back sometime. Talk about anything.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, this has been Doom Discussions, and we've been talking with Matt Bacon and Eryka Fir. And how can people kind of check out your wares and follow you? So start with Eryka.
Okay, so my band has an Instagram. We're Coma Hole, Coma_Hole. I have my main, which is where I post all like my bass stuff and random art at just Eryka Fir. And then I do have like a separate art jewelry making page called Lone Crone Creation. So most of the stuff I do is all on Instagram pretty much right now. But cool. Yeah, those are my handles.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to start following you on IG. Matt, I don't know if you want people to get a hold of you. You're so damn busy, but I know we can at least follow you on Twitter where you're really active.
Bacons.bits, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You know, go be on TikTok. It's cool. You can see all the angry people there. It's a whole new type of angry people. It's great.
I have been flirting with that, so maybe we can come back again sometime and talk about my experiences with TikTok. It's not yet an experience. I haven't done anything with it, but I did register for an account. So maybe my challenge will be to do something with it for a little bit, and we can come back and talk.
I had finally caved and made one like a month ago.
Oh,
honestly,
yeah.
It's like it's kind of cool because everybody kept saying to do it, especially a lot of like other musician friends were like, do it, like you can like do duets and all this stuff, and I was like, nah, like I don't wanna. And then like eventually I was like, I guess I'll try it. And like, I mean, it's definitely like different, and it's the way that it, I don't know, puts your stuff out to people, but also it seems like I'm always steadily growing people, and like the duet part is honestly like the coolest thing ever. Like there's this one dude that started following me, and like he just started duetting like a bunch of my bass videos, and he's like an incredible guitarist, and like from that we've started like talking about like doing little projects together. I think his handle is Mike Musso Kelly. But yeah, he's really cool. So like he can do cool stuff like that. Just put you in contact with different people.
I think we just have set a date for another Doom discussion. Maybe in a month or so we can come back together and talk about our experiences. And I'm going to do something and see what happens. So thank you for the encouragement to keep going. And as you just mentioned, sometimes it's just about that one connection you get through doing something just a little bit outside of your comfort zone. So
yeah,
it's a great testimony. All right, guys. Well, this has been Billy from doomedandstoned.com. Thank you for listening.